I spend a lot of my time talking with customers about the transition from CAPEX to OPEX. So a capital expenditure versus that monthly recurring expenditure. I mean, today you can get a car wash on a monthly recurring fee. You get unlimited car washes for that. And in that model where a lot of vendors, and you can pick the technology that's doing this, we see it across the board. One of the things that they're doing is wrapping that service and support of that. Let's say it's a component of your infrastructure. So instead of doing it as a one-time purchase, here's this monthly fee, and we're going to support it, and they throw that support into it. But now you're taking that support out of your teams and into their team's support. So what are some of the things to look out for in that new model and keeping that security in front of mind?
And I think there's a lot of people are moving, moving for financial reasons, but they're also moving for functionality reasons. The vendors, Microsoft's a good example. You get more functionality with full-on Microsoft 365 than if you do a hybrid or a full-on premises-based solution. So sometimes it's not financially motivated, but I go back to we need to understand what our responsibility is in any kind of an outsourced arrangement. So where line of business applications or other working applications are being outsourced, it's being moved from a CAPEX to an OPEX, or even for a functionality purpose, we need to make sure we understand what we need to do to protect it. We need to evaluate and not just on the purchase, but on a regular basis to make sure that the firms that we've engaged are doing what they say they're going to do. And that can be an application, or it could be a managed service provider or some other outsourced process. If they're not handling information in the way that you expect, you are outsourcing the work, but you're not outsourcing the obligation to protect the information. And so some of the same things that you might do internally to audit yourselves or to assess yourselves, you need to find a way to do that with your outsourced partners as well. Some of the bigger firms are more difficult to work with, but they have programs to, or part of their operation is to give you some of that information. Smaller vendors, we work with a lot of small startups, they really struggle, but a lot of times they'll let you do your own scanning or do those kinds of things. So you want to negotiate that. You want to do a risk assessment or a risk analysis before you make that move, regardless of why you're making it. And you want to then negotiate the right to at least get reports and feedback about how well they are from a security standpoint. You want to have an option to regularly, on a periodic basis, annually, for instance, assess the risk there, and then keeping some eye on threat feeds and understanding where they may be having some security problems. There are products out there, security scorecard, bit sites, where I can monitor the digital breadcrumbs, so to speak, of a firm's internet behavior and see how well they're presenting themselves from a security standpoint. And so there are tools out there as well to use, but understand your role, do a risk analysis at the purchase, do a continual, some periodic annual risk assessment to make sure they're still in the same place, and keep an eye on them, particularly if they have critical data or information that's regulated or your firm depends on it to operate.
As you mentioned before, in COVID, the economy, not everyone did poorly, some accelerated. And I've often said some of these companies that did well in the COVID times see some of the people in their regions that didn't do so well as being on sale. So now I'm seeing an uptick in mergers and acquisitions. And I know you spent a lot of time in this area. What are some of the boxes, if you're talking to somebody before a merger or acquisition, what are some of the boxes you want to make sure they have checked, or any red flags that you would look for if you were given just generic advice on that?
Well, it's almost the same thing as if I'm acquiring an application for you. But in this case, I'm not going to just buy the company and buy the technology that's there, but I'm going to buy any problems they might have. And so the due diligence that's done in an acquisition, really to make sure that there's financial resiliency, financial strength, that the company's as successful as they say they are, or they've been successful in the past and maybe struggling now. We need to look at the same thing from a technology perspective. And so the first thing is, again, a risk assessment to make sure that there aren't any things that are standing out. If we get engaged to do that kind of thing, we're going to treat that client or that target, the buying target. We're going to look at that and evaluate that like we would a client, but report back to the team that's doing the due diligence about how secure that organization might be. We, in that sense, would probably also do some investigation into indicators of compromise. Is there an active event? Are we going to buy something that's on fire? We just don't know it. And so from a technical perspective, that's important. We've seen in some cases, and this goes long ago, about a decade ago, where there was quite a bit of acquisition effort in the market, and an active event can actually lower the value of the purchase. If you don't catch it, it can lower the value of what you've bought. And so you want to catch it before the deal is struck, so that if there is an issue, just like when you're buying a house, if there's an issue, you'd rather have the seller fix it than you have to fix it once you've made the purchase. So that security assessment is important. And then I think it always gets lost because it's a people thing. It's culture. Does the IT department, does the senior management that are going to stay, do they have the same concern, the same risk tolerance, the same security posture that you have? Because again, they may not have any issues today, but now they're going to be operating within your business. And is it going to be countercultural to those firms because they don't see eye to eye? And that needs to be addressed and worked out prior to the acquisition actually occurring.